My neighbor knocked on my door asking for sugar, and I called 911 immediately. It started on a Tuesday afternoon when I was just trying to finish some freelance work in my apartment. There was a knock at the door. I usually ignore people I am not expecting, but they kept knocking. It was a rhythmic, frantic sound that made my skin crawl. When I looked through the peephole, it was my neighbor from down the hall. I think his name is Mark. He looked completely disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was sweating through a gray t-shirt even though the hallway was freezing. I opened the door just a crack. He did not even wait for me to say hello. He leaned in close, smelling like stale coffee and something metallic. He whispered that he needed a cup of sugar. It sounded like a normal request, but his voice was trembling so hard I could barely understand him. He kept glancing over his shoulder toward the elevator. He told me not to make a scene and to just go get the sugar quickly. He said that they were watching the cameras, and if I acted weird, we were both in trouble. I should have just shut the door. Instead, I felt this wave of absolute dread. I told him to wait a second. I went into my kitchen, but I did not grab sugar. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I whispered my address and told them a man was threatening me in my doorway. The operator told me to stay on the line. I walked back to the door with an empty measuring cup just to keep him there. Mark was pacing now. He kept telling me to hurry up. He said that if I just gave him the sugar, he could finish the delivery and they would leave him alone. I asked him who they were. He pointed at the smoke detector in the hallway. He said the lenses were hidden in the plastic casing. At that point, I realized he was either having a total mental breakdown or he was on something very dangerous. The police arrived faster than I expected. Two officers came up the stairs instead of the elevator. When Mark saw them, he did not run. He just fell to his knees and started screaming that he was almost done. He kept pointing at my apartment and saying I was the one holding him up. The officers tackled him right there in front of my welcome mat. One of the officers stayed behind to take my statement. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my ID. I told him everything about the sugar and the cameras and the hidden lenses. I expected the officer to tell me Mark was just a local guy with some issues. Instead, the officer looked at me very seriously. He asked if Mark had touched anything in my kitchen. I said no. Then he told me that Mark was not just a confused neighbor. They had been tracking him for weeks. He was part of a group that was using apartment buildings to move specialized hardware for intercepting digital signals. The cup of sugar was a code. It was a signal that the drop-off point was clear. By calling the police instead of just playing along or kicking him out, I had accidentally interrupted a handoff that was supposed to happen in the unit right next to mine. The police spent the next 6 hours searching the building. They found a series of signal boosters hidden inside the walls of the laundry room and the utility closets. Mark was not crazy about the cameras either. They found a modified lens inside the hallway, smoke detector just like he said. He was not a victim of a conspiracy. He was the one helping set it up. I ended up moving out the following month. Every time I hear a knock on a door now, my heart starts racing. I cannot even look at a bag of sugar without thinking about how close I came to just handing him what he wanted and letting him go back to work. I keep wondering what would have happened if I had just been a nice neighbor and ignored my gut feeling. I probably would have ended up as a footnote in a federal investigation. Now I just stay in a building with a doorman and I do not talk to anyone in the hall. Full story on the channel, link below.